Hello, Jen. Welcome back to the Kristan Hawkins Show. Today, we're going to talk about, you guessed it, Planned Parenthood. I'm going to go over a little bit more information about just how exactly those tax dollars, that check you just wrote to the government, like I had to write last week, how it actually gets to Planned Parenthood. I also want to talk about why moms of young children may not be as unhappy as Chappell Roan thinks that they are. Because, of course, she doesn't know anything because she lives in a childless lesbian bubble in LA, but we'll keep going. And then I want to talk about my Easter reflection, something that's been on my heart as we get closer to celebrating Easter this weekend. So first, let's talk about Chappell Roan. By now, I'm sure you have seen this viral clip from the Call Her Daddy podcast where Chappell Roan, a pop star who I didn't know existed until about 6 months ago, threw all of her friends under the bus and revealed to the world that all the young parents she knew were living in hell. If you haven't seen it, let's take a look and remind ourselves of how bad it was.
All of my friends who have kids are in hell. I don't know anyone. I actually don't know anyone who's like happy and has children at this age. I have like a 1-year-old, like 3-year-old, 4 and under, 5 and under. I literally have not met anyone who's happy, anyone who has like light in their eyes, anyone who has slept.
Way to go, breaking the confidence of every young parent friend of yours who has ever confided in you, Chappell. I'm sure they're going to be rushing to come and talk to you even more. I have to wonder how her friends feel about having their private parenting stories characterized by her pop star friend as hell. I'm sure they probably wouldn't put it that way. But putting that aside, Chappell Roan and kind of the pushback that we saw on social media, she had it coming when she made that statement. Because moms on social media were pretty pissed off. Like, we're not going to stand by and be misrepresented by a childless lesbian 20-something who thinks that all mom friends, all young mothers are miserable. It was fascinating to watch moms quickly responding on social with content, filling up their feeds, filling up our feeds with how fulfilling they find parenting to be, and really opening up the discussion about really who is happiest in our culture. And no surprise, I do kind of have a controversial take on this. But first, let's go into the numbers, right? Let's look at what the numbers tell us, right? Follow the science, because there's actually research on this. And I know the left likes to say things like follow the science and then never does, but let's get to the research. The General Social Survey, so it's called the GSS. It's a huge national representative survey of adults in America. It's conducted every year. It's been going on since 1972. The GSS collects data on contemporary American society, quote, in order to monitor and explain trends in attitudes, opinions, and behavior. The GSS has adapted questions from earlier surveys, therefore allowing researchers to conduct comparisons for up to 80 years. It's a big deal. So the last survey I was able to find was 2022, and it said that the happiest women are women who are married with children in America. And when they looked at all women, put all women across the board on the chart, married women with children won the happiness competition, like full stop. Nearly 40% from the GSS of married women with children reported to be, quote, very happy, while nearly 48% said they were pretty happy, with less than 13% reporting not too happy. That's pretty awesome. I mean, considering all that motherhood is and takes from many of us, right? And requires of us, especially those of us who have to work outside of the home, as well as being a full-time mom. On the other hand, the group of women with the largest percentage in the not too happy category, shock, were women who are unmarried without children. Nearly 25% of unmarried, childless women were not too happy, and only 21.5% of them, according to the GSS, reported being very happy. I think it's important to note here that single moms, unmarried women with children, have similar numbers as the childless counterparts. And I think that makes sense, right? Because mothers who are raising their children on their own are exhausted. I don't think I've ever met a single mom who didn't have multiple jobs and wasn't exhausted and needed help, right? But it's clear if you look at the data, there's a huge happiness gap between women who are married with children and women who are unmarried without children. It's right there. Now, if all of Chappell Roan's friends are single moms, her perception might be a little skewed about what reality looks like across all of America. But as an unmarried woman without children, Chappell Roan herself is more likely on a statistical level to be less happy than somebody like me. Let's look at the data. I'm going to put this data chart up on the screen for you because I think it's fascinating when you look at the pretty happy, the very happy, so the greens and blues compared to the red, which is the not too happy category. It's very clear what's going on here. I was so excited to see all of the videos of moms speaking out and really railing against what Chappell Roan said, talking about how beautiful and how fulfilling motherhood actually is. Especially because there's so many young girls who idolize Chappell Roan, who've known about her existence far before I did, who may be now tragically thinking of foregoing motherhood because of comments like hers and other celebrities who have been saying they've been completely writing off motherhood as if it's some sort of, miserable, noble pursuit in life. I mean, we've seen this for years from women who are in Hollywood have said that, they had to choose very early on if they were going to get married and have children or if they were going to be successful, and that they had to choose. They chose the success. And, Chelsea, what's her name? Chelsea Handler. She's one of them, which I don't know if you would call her a raging success, but, she always is very braggadocious about the fact that she doesn't want kids, she doesn't want a man, and how successful she is, and she's successful because she left all those things behind. I think there's something though kind of missing from the conversation. I mean, for one, let's just talk about how that completely anti-feminist that argument is, right? So the first wave of feminism, the second wave of feminism, especially the second wave of feminism, the 1960s feminism, 1970s feminism, which I'm kind of a big fan of some of the stuff they did, like burn bras. Hell yeah, I'm down any day. I wish we could all get burn bras. Okay, there's some things I really like. Right, I like the fact that women can now go to school and get college degrees and educations and get equal pay in the workforce. Yeah, those are all good things. But it's interesting because the messaging of that second wave feminism wasn't that women should not be mothers. It wasn't that women shouldn't get married. That wasn't the original intent there. It was that women should have the option to be moms, to be married, and also be successful in the workforce or achieve other goals they've set out for themselves. But it's somehow along the way, and I think it's mostly because of third wave selfish feminists in the 1990s, it got completely corrupted into now feminism is forgoing motherhood and marriage and just being this selfish brat of the Chappell Roan person forever. And that's somehow ultimate success, which is completely anti-feminist because the message you convey, Chappell Roan and other Hollywood people like Chelsea Handler, whoever, is that women are incapable of having both. And I will be the first one to tell you, as a working mother, and I know I work a different job, and I hate to use the word job, than most other women, right? I don't have a 9 to 5 clock in, clock out job, and I'm gone and I have to travel. But I do get, fringe benefits of like I can work from home or I can work from our camper or wherever we're traveling the country. But just it's so crazy that is like the messaging that the women can't do it. Women can do it, but I can tell you from firsthand experience, it's going to be hard. And that's what I always try to counsel young pro-life leaders who come to me and say, how do I stay active in the pro-life movement? How do I fulfill my goal of starting a pregnancy center or maternity home after graduation while also fulfilling my vocation of becoming a wife and a mother? My counsel to them is, you just have to always constantly prioritize. You always have to know what your priorities are, and think of it like juggling as a working mom. That you're going to have rubber balls you're juggling and there's glass balls that you're juggling. And, sometimes you're not going to be able to keep all the balls in the air at the same time. I don't think I could juggle it all, but if I could, right? You have to know what your rubber balls are because some balls you're going to have to let drop, but you'll know they can bounce back up. But there's those glass balls that you're juggling. Those are the ones that if they fall, they're going to shatter, that you cannot let drop. And as a working mother, you always, and I think your balls, right, that you have, your rubber balls versus your glass balls, it changes sometimes. Sometimes this work ball that you thought was rubber actually becomes a glass ball, because if you don't get this right, you get fired, right? Or you get this wrong. This work ball becomes a glass ball, which it was a rubber ball 3 months ago. And then, or maybe you've been neglecting your health. Me, I put myself up there for a long time because you've been busy on everything else. And then it becomes like a glass ball of like, no, you really got to get healthy because of this, this, and this. And then this rubber ball that you thought was a rubber ball really becomes a glass ball. And as a working mom, you constantly have to know what balls you're juggling and what's your rubber and what's your glass. I think that's so important. The other thing that I think that's missing from this conversation, beside the fact that like women can actually do both things, they have to know which balls they're juggling. Women can do it, is that this fundamental truth about humans is missing from this conversation. And this is what I see on campuses all the time. I'm still thinking about a conversation I had with a young girl at Montana State in Bozeman this September, who came up to me shouting and admitting she had an abortion, admitted to everyone who gathered there that the abortion was super painful. But she was so proud she had an abortion because she was getting her master's degree in biology, and her husband just couldn't do it. And it was so crazy because I was like, you're a smart girl. You're going to get a good paying job. You're married. You had a support system, and you still chose to kill your baby. And I tried to unpack this with her. But it was so fascinating because I remember the end of the conversation, and I still think about what could I have done better, where I ended the conversation with her saying, look, I can't debate this with you any longer because I can't get you to see that maybe your life has more value than you think it is. That maybe your ultimate happiness, your ultimate fulfillment may not come from you just pursuing carnal pleasures or going to the best vacation spot and posting on Instagram. That maybe your life was meant to be a gift for others. Maybe there's a bigger point to your life than achieving this career goal that you've set out, or having as much fun as you possibly can as a human experiencing this world. If you can't see that your life is maybe bigger than that, I'm not going to convince you that helpless, innocent humans have any point to their lives. And I think this is ultimately the crux of our problem, that we have to understand as humans, we cannot ultimately find complete fulfillment in ourselves. We can only find that fulfillment in giving the gift of ourself to others. Think about like when you're the most happiest, right, in your life. Is it when you finally got the car you wanted, or the cool outfit you wanted, or got to the concert you wanted to go to, or got to that vacation spot, or got that degree you've been working towards? Or was it when you made a selfless choice and that changed someone else's life, they gave to somebody else? That's when you got your most happiness. When you donated something, or you gave of yourself to someone else. Giving of yourself unlocks a level of happiness and fulfillment that I think so many now are going their entire life without even experiencing. And you won't experience it if you use your whole life chasing your own desires. This is what makes me sad when you hear people like Chappell Roan and others, like this young woman I talked with at Bozeman. I think someone's capacity for happiness is stunted and smaller when they don't recognize that real happiness begins where their self-centeredness ends. There's a quote that really hits home from one of our popes in the Catholic Church, Pope Paul VI in 1965, he predicted a lot of things that we're living through today in our world. He said, quote, "Man could not fully find himself except in the sincere gift of himself." Motherhood is where women will experience this reality in totality. I think that's why most women are probably meant to become mothers, whether a biological mother, adoptive mother, because we're meant to unlock the secret to happiness of giving ourselves to our children. You find out who you really are what you are capable of, and your capacity for love that you never fathom possible when you sacrifice your time and your energy, your finances, everything you have on behalf of your child, on behalf of another. And I genuinely believe you can't fully understand what I'm saying unless you're a parent yourself. And I'm not trying to talk down to anyone. I truly am not. It's something you have to experience to understand. I remember when I was pregnant with my first child, Gunnar, and I had like these plans and things that I wanted to do at Students for Life, at work, right? And I remember women telling me like, everything's going to change as soon as you meet your son, everything. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, everything changes. I remember someone saying to me, and you all know I love puppies, right? I've got one sitting right here recovering from her space surgery. You all know I love puppies. I remember someone saying like, well, you think you love your dog now, but wait till you meet your child. It'll all change. And I remember thinking, that's so cruel. Why would anyone ever say that about my dog? At the time, he was alive, Kramer. I love Kramer. I've had him since he's a puppy. He's my baby. And I remember coming home from the hospital with Gunnar, looking at Kramer and looking at my husband. And I was like, oh my gosh, she was totally right. He's just a dog. The level of love that I had for Kramer was nothing compared to the level of love that I had for my son, Gunnar. And it took me holding my son in my arms to realize, oh my gosh, that's right. I still loved Kramer, but I didn't love Kramer at the level I loved my human son. You don't find happiness in spite of the discomfort and self-sacrifice required by motherhood. It is through, Chappell Roan, if you're listening, it is through the sleepless nights, the tantrums, the never-ending laundry, the poopy diaper explosions in the backseat of the car, the, now what I live through, adolescent mood swings and sweaty armpits that make you want to roll down the windows even when it's -2 degrees. It's in every struggle in between that, as we give ourselves to our children, that we find joy that eludes people like Chappell Roan. She cannot see past the exhaustion and the struggle of parenting because she cannot see the connection between self-gift and experiencing deep joy. And it's sad. I don't know if she'll ever change her mind about having kids. It would be kind of hard to have them if she continues to be a lesbian. But I really do hope that the little girls who follow her, who will hear her voice, hear others like her, will start to hear other influential women telling them that telling them the truth, that motherhood's actually really great. And you'll never do anything better with your entire life here on this earth. Hey, Project Jen, this is your show host, Kristan Hawkins, and I have an incredible opportunity for you to make a real impact for life this summer. On Saturday, June 28th, we're gathering on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. for the National Celebrate Life Weekend Rally, and you do not want to miss this event. We are going to host the nation's largest diaper drive, sponsored by the nation's only pro-life diaper brand, Every Life. Here's the goal. We want to bring together 392,715 diapers and scatter them on the lawn of the U.S. Capitol. One diaper for every baby that's been lost to abortion at Planned Parenthood in the last year. It's going to be extremely powerful. But instead of letting those diapers, just go to waste or letting these precious lives be forgotten, we want to turn that number into hope for moms and families in need in the Washington, D.C. area. So we're going to be giving them away after the massive rally and display. We are in a critical moment right now in the pro-life movement. Defunding Planned Parenthood is finally possible with the new Trump administration, but we're going to have to push harder than ever before to show why Planned Parenthood doesn't deserve a dime of their taxpayer dollars. And I believe this massive display on Capitol Hill will send a clear message to Republican leadership on Capitol Hill that Planned Parenthood must finally go fund themselves. The National Celebrate Life Weekend Rally is a completely free event. All you have to do is go to CelebrateLifeWeekend.org and sign up for the free rally. You can come, stand with us, bring some diapers, and be a part of a historic moment and provide real help to struggling families in need. And if you can't make it to Washington, D.C., you can still join us and make a difference, because you can go to CelebrateLifeWeekend.com and donate to our diaper fund. Every dollar you donate will go to purchase at-cost diapers from Every Life that we will use at this display to tell Planned Parenthood they never should deserve any of our taxpayer dollars. Then those diapers will be given away to families in need. It's going to be amazing. This is our chance to show the nation, to show all of America, that the pro-life movement is about action. We're demanding action from our leaders on Capitol Hill to finally defund Planned Parenthood of our taxpayer dollars, and we're showing action that we love and care for her more than the greedy abortion industry. So sign up now at CelebrateLifeWeekend.org. Next topic. You thought I forgot about Planned Parenthood for a second. You were wrong. I hope you joined our Tax Day National webcast this week, where we talked about the urgency we have right now in defunding Planned Parenthood. If you didn't, go to Students for Life Action's website and make sure you watch the webcast. You can actually contact Congress. Go to studentsforlifeaction.org/tell Congress. I'll put the link somewhere on this show in Magic World, because that was really our big action item. Is we need everyone emailing House Representatives members, your U.S. senators, telling them to defund Planned Parenthood, because we think we only have a matter of weeks before budget reconciliation is done, and that is the only way to get defunding passed through Congress without needing 60 votes in the U.S. Senate, and they want to do it before Memorial Day. So the rush is on, and lots of action items are going to be coming from Students for Life and me in the coming weeks. But since it was tax day, since Kristan had to write a big check to the government, let's go through a little bit how your tax dollars actually get to Planned Parenthood. We've been saying nearly 700 million, 699 million to be exact, federal taxpayer dollars go to Planned Parenthood every year. But where does it come from? Okay, let's talk about the three primary sources: Medicaid reimbursements, Title 10 grants, state grants, and funding. I'm going to go through each of them. We have a really cool blog on the Students for Life website that I'll link in the show notes, that has most of this information. So you can go and find it and copy and paste it and do whatever you want to do with it to spread it around the internet, as you all awesomely do. Reminder, Planned Parenthood is an abortion business. 97% of its offerings to pregnant women are abortion. It has killed more children in America than any other entity ever, period, forever. How they pull it off. And by the way, they rely on our killing babies. As you can see it, because these Planned Parenthoods, as I've been celebrating every week, I've been talking about different Planned Parenthood facilities that are shutting down. They're shutting down in blue states. They're shutting down in states that are actually still giving them state money. They can't keep their doors open because a lot of women are moving to online abortions, extremely dangerous, and they're not going to their dirty Planned Parenthood facilities, which we know from a New York Times expose that they literally can't even afford to upkeep, right? So they're like shutting down their facilities in blue states right now. We've got California, Illinois, New York State, and Manhattan, Michigan, and then this week I heard of one, I think it was like in Massachusetts. It's crazy. So, okay, how do they get their money? Main source of money is Medicaid. As you remember, right? Medicaid is health care coverage for those who can't afford private health insurance. Because remember, Obamacare, ACA, made it a law that said you are legally bound to have health insurance. So Medicaid is a joint, it's called a block grant. So it's a joint program. So half the money comes from the federal government, half the money comes from the state government to people with limited income and resources. So it's like it's a matching grant. Sometimes you'll see Students for Life fundraising. We're like, we have a matching grant. Like, someone's donating 100,000. We need to raise 100,000. So we have 200,000. So they receive, 2019 to 2022, there was a Government Accountability Office report, so GAO report, that said that Planned Parenthood affiliates received $1.5 billion in Medicaid, Medicare, and Children's Health Insurance Program CHIP payments. That's their cash cow. Now, this money is really interesting because in 1977, something passed Congress called the Hyde Amendment, which says you can't directly give money for abortions, federal taxpayer dollars for abortions, except for rape, incest, or when the life of the mother is in danger. And that's been renewed pretty much every year. Some of the Biden years, we didn't have that renewed. But so some people were like, well, that's okay then. Planned Parenthood's getting money, but because of the Hyde Amendment, they can't be killing babies with it. Yeah, that doesn't make sense, right? If you give them money, they're using it to pay their mortgage, to shovel snow in their parking lot, to pay their receptionist, to pay their electric bills, right? To pay for the abortion, the table, the surgical table. All that money can come from taxpayers. You just can't pay for like the 15 minutes that the abortionist is actually dismembering a human being. So it's always fungible. Remember that. Like the money doesn't go into like separate bank accounts. Like here's your bank account for abortion money, for abortion expenses, and here's your bank account, Planned Parenthood, for non-abortion expenses. No, it goes into one bank account. It doesn't make sense. It's like when grandma and your parents give you money and your grandma's like, buy whatever you want. And your mom's like, here's money, buy it for books for school. And you put both the checks, right, into your checking account. And then, you buy some concert tickets to the Mumford & Sons tour. And then you buy some school books. Which one went to the Mumford & Sons and which one went to the school books? I don't know. And I'll take a drink of my Celsius, who does not sponsor this podcast, but they should because I drink enough of it. Okay. I mean, I think I said something last week of like, that would be like saying you can't pay the rent, at a massage parlor that's also a brothel, and say you're not funding prostitution, right? If it's a massage parlor that's also a brothel and you give them massage parlor money to pay their rent, you also pay the rent of the brothel and you're funding prostitution. So we've been saying for years, look, nobody in the pro-life movement is arguing that people who need health care can't get health care. We're just saying as Medicaid, we can say that money doesn't go to Planned Parenthood, because anybody who's on private health insurance, myself included, knows there are in-network and there's out-of-network providers. My health insurance allows our family to go to in-network providers, and they pay, a certain percentage of those costs. If I choose to go to an out-of-network provider, I have to pay more money. And then there's other providers I could go to, like a holistic healer or whatever, and they'll be like, yeah, we're not paying anything. You're paying 100% out of pocket. So no one's arguing that poor women shouldn't get health care. Poor women should get health care. Like that's like universal. We all agree with that. What we're saying is the government, as a health insurance agency, which essentially it is with Medicaid and Medicare, can negotiate with healthcare providers, and they can tell people who are receiving their health insurance which providers they can go to that the government will reimburse the cost for. We're not saying women can't choose to go to Planned Parenthood. I hope none of them do, and I hope every Planned Parenthood is shut down. But we're saying if you're going to use our money, you should only be able to go to well-qualified healthcare providers that don't kill babies, because if your healthcare kills humans, you're doing it wrong and you suck. Okay. And that's what the argument at the Supreme Court was over earlier this month on, I think it was April 2nd, the Medina v. Planned Parenthood South Atlantic case, where South Carolina said, listen, in our block grant money for Medicaid, we ain't giving money to women to go to Planned Parenthood. We're not using our tax dollars for that. And the argument for the court is, well, it's a right. Women have a right to this health care and therefore have a right to choose any provider they want. But that doesn't make sense, because anybody on private health care insurance, anyone, if you have grandparents in Medicaid, will know, Medicare, all retired people, 65 or whatever, you get Medicare. Medicare is good health insurance. Most people on Medicare, right, they can go to Medicare providers. Why? Because the government doesn't fully cover all of the healthcare providers' costs. They actually pay less than what they charge private health insurances, but because it's in bulk, right, they send so many patients to them, they negotiate deals with the hospitals, the healthcare providers, and say, listen, you charge, I don't know, $10,000 for a knee replacement. We are the government and we're the largest health insurance agency out there. We're going to give you 5 and you're going to be happy with it, because we're going to refer a lot of people to you. And these providers and hospitals, they're like, fine, whatever. And then they accept the contract. And then that's actually why people who have private health insurance actually end up paying more. Sorry, I'm giving you a health insurance lesson. Like having 2 kids with CF, I know about how the health insurance industry works. But that's how it actually happens. And that's what happens. I mean, if you ever know anybody who's a doctor or a hospital executive, they'll complain about the government coming in saying, we're not covering what it actually costs you to treat that patient, but you have to accept this money because we're referring so many people to you. It's kind of like Costco, right? They sell their gas under market value because they make so much money because there's so many people going in buying big things of toilet paper. All right. So you had Medicaid money be defunded from Planned Parenthood in several states already. So South Carolina, Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi, they've all tried to block Planned Parenthood from getting their state Medicaid money. This is why that Medina case, the South Carolina case, is big, because if the Supreme Court says that South Carolina and South Carolinians have a right not to fund Planned Parenthood with their taxpayer dollars, all these other states will also be able to continue to defund Planned Parenthood of their taxpayer dollars. We're praying for that outcome in June. The other way that they're getting money is Title X grants and other miscellaneous grants. Remember I talked about, how Planned Parenthood likes their hand in every grant cookie jar. They have some fantastic grant writers there. Like when the Zika virus, that mosquito-borne virus, was raging in Florida a few years ago, Planned Parenthood got money for that. When COVID hit and there was that Paycheck Protection Program, and Planned Parenthood didn't qualify because they're, $1 billion, $2 billion a year organization, they still had their individual affiliates apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. And they got like $80 million. And even though it was found that they illegally got it, they never paid it back. They get their money in like hands in every money cookie jar they can. Title X is one of those ways. So Title X was established in 1969 by President Richard Nixon, who wanted, now let's back this train up. Richard Nixon was a eugenicist. I've talked about this before. It's clear if you ever read or listened to any of his audio tapes of the recorded conversations in the White House. So he asked Congress in 1969 to set up funds for family planning and contraception for low-income people, which led to the Public Health Services Act of 1944 being revised into a program known as Title X. Title X was supposed to create family planning service funding for contraception, STD testing and treatment, cancer screenings, pregnancy counseling. For years, Planned Parenthood. Now, remember, why did he set up this family planning fund? Because he thought there should be less Black people. Yeah, he was a racist. But anyway, so Planned Parenthood, being the non-racist entity that they are, for years has been getting Title X funding, and has used Title X as a workaround of the Hyde Amendment, right? So they get Title X funding, use it as a marketing tool, spend money on marketing, come in, get your birth control, get your STD test, pregnancy test, all while pushing their big ticket item once you're in the door of abortion. The Kaiser Family Foundation reports that 20.6% million of grants goes directly from the Trump administration to Planned Parenthood was frozen in the recent kind of DOGE thing about DEI and kind of freezing grants to federal entities that have DEI hiring practices. But there's more. During the first Trump administration, it was reported that they were receiving over $50 million in Title X grants, and they voluntarily withdrew out of that grant when they knew the Trump administration was going to come after them. So when you hear somebody say, oh, Donald Trump defunded Planned Parenthood in his first administration, that's what they're talking about. It's called the Protect Life Rule. And it said no federal, grantings can go to an organization that commits abortion. So they withdrew from Title X because they knew they were going to lose that $50 million. Then they got back and got more money during the Biden administration. But the big thing you need to know was Planned Parenthood, that cash cow Medicaid money still was going to Planned Parenthood all through the first Trump administration. The third bucket of money is state grants and funding, and it's all over. You have to Google to find all the little hands, grubby little hands, bloody little hands in the cookie jars, I would say. Nashville, the city of Nashville, gave a $500,000 grant to Planned Parenthood of Tennessee and North Mississippi for sexual health education through their Metro Council. California once set aside $8 million for a Clinic Lifeline grant program to fund the bridging of the gap between federal funding and new future funding. So that was just like free money. Connecticut passed a bill this year that includes $800,000 in funding to Planned Parenthood of Southern New England so they can stockpile chemical abortion pills. Illinois gave Planned Parenthood $2 million in training grants so they can sell access to the training and mentorship about ending life through intentional abortion. And that is only a very small list that I came up with in like 10 minutes on a Google search. So there's way more out there. Abortion funding, bottom line, is a cancer throughout our federal and likely our state budgets, draining life-affirming resources and life-affirming resources into corrupting programs. We have an analysis up at Students for Life Action that shows a number of programs have been tainted with this abortion ugliness inside of them. Using federal lands for abortions, to commit abortions, to push taking money from PEPFAR, which is a grant, international grant, to end AIDS. They get money to push abortion instead. Like, none of this makes sense. It's crazy. My last topic for today is an Easter reflection for you all. I want to give you something to think about and, more importantly, to pray about as we exit the Lent and enter into this Easter season. I call it Easter season because I think Easter should go on for weeks, right? Something that I've been extremely aware of late, and I can't stop thinking about, is that you can't kill millions of children, right? Year after year, decade after decade in our country with no long-term effects. Doesn't happen. We've had tens of millions of children, over 60 million children killed in America since 1973. At the same time, our society has been degraded beyond what many people believe is any hope of repair. Think about it. In what other scenario would you kill thousands of innocent people every week and nonstop for decades and that not have an impact? Think about it. In what other scenario can you kill thousands of innocent people every week, nonstop for decades, and that not have an impact on the individuals who are being left behind? For every child killed in abortion, there's a mother and a father, 2 sets of grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins. Virtually everyone now has a close connection to a child who's been killed in abortion violence. Over time, that violence has a compounding cumulative effect, and I think it's affected our entire culture. And we're seeing it in action today. We're seeing it play out. Let me go, I'm a numbers person. Let me go to the numbers. A Pew study out earlier this month reported, and this shouldn't be a surprise, but those who reject faith in a creator, are those most likely to reject the value of preborn infants. Makes sense. To be specific, atheists and agnostics identify as Democrats by a massive margin, 84 to 13% for atheists. So 84% of atheists, Democrat, 13% Republican. 78% of agnostics, Democrat, to 12% Republican. Why is this significant? Why am I bringing politics into this? Because Democrats kind of have a huge problem. They don't just defend their willingness for violence, they're now openly celebrating it. They condone violence inside the womb and increasingly now violence outside of the womb. And it's my belief that this is a byproduct of a culture that champions now the killing of children in abortion violence, the inconvenient children. Look at some examples. So Luigi Maggioni, you'll remember him, right? He's this killer who went and shot the CEO of United Healthcare in the back last December. Now, first of all, United Healthcare does have healthcare problems because somebody who's been on United Healthcare, it's not great. But did that justify killing the CEO? He killed him in cold blood. He should be viewed in our society as a criminal loser who deserves to spend the rest of his life in jail. Instead, there's a shocking number of Americans who feel that what Maggioni did was justified. Polling by Emerson College revealed that among youth voters 18 to 29, 41% found the killer's actions acceptable. About 24% found them somewhat acceptable, and 17% found them completely acceptable. Similarly, many Americans on the left now admit that they think they would be justified to kill their political opponents. A report from a website called Modernity discusses a new poll that found this to be true. It said, I'm going to read it here. A shocking poll discovered the majority of Americans identify as left of center politically believe that murdering President Trump would be justified. The survey was conducted by the Network Contagion Research Institute, which describes itself as a neutral and independent organization whose mission is to identify and forecast cyber social threats and report on them in a timely fashion. A total of 55% of leftists responding to the poll said the use of deadly violence against their political enemies is acceptable, with 48% also saying it would be okay to kill Elon Musk. This was a survey of 1,300 Americans, 38% of whom said it was at least somewhat justified to murder President Trump, while 31% said the same about Elon Musk. Additionally, don't have to look very further, is that how many young Americans now sympathize with Hamas and have worked on campuses to promote or participate in anti-Semitic riots, protests, following the October 2023 massacre that Hamas did and committed on the Israeli people. On that day, Hamas killed over 1,200 innocent people, including women and children. 1,200. A survey by a higher ed online magazine called Intelligent found that among college students who said they had pro-Palestinian protests on campus, 65% of students were supportive of the protests happening on the campus. More than 1/3 of the protest supporters are in favor of the use of violence and hate speech. And more than half of the protest supporters say they sympathize with Hamas. This is just crazy. Hamas is a terrorist organization who believes that Israel should be wiped from the face of the earth. Literally was in their founding document. Can we have sympathy and should we advocate against what is happening in Palestine with Israel targeting churches and hospitals and the humanitarian crisis that's happening in Palestine during this war? I believe we should, absolutely. Because Israel has a right to exist, but it does not have also the right to eliminate innocent humans. Just like how Hamas doesn't have the right. But to say you are supportive of Hamas, I mean, foreign policy is not black and white, first of all. I think we live in this really weird culture where we think foreign policy is black and white and is anything but black and white. Look at Syria, for example, what's happened in Syria for decades, where the CIA was on basically both sides of that. There was no black and white in the Syrian situation and what's happened. There wasn't even a good side in the Syrian situation. You had a dictator who was somewhat allowing Christians to live and stopped killing them after he initially came to power and killed a bunch of them, but he was keeping the Islamic terrorists at bay. And then he leaves and everyone's like, yes, this awful dictator, who was an awful dictator, is gone. But now we're supposed to celebrate that ISIS is in control of Syria and literally killing Christians. There's no good side there, right? So I think, one, we need to stop thinking of foreign policy as just like black and white, because it ain't. But like to side with Hamas, to say you support Hamas, which literally is a terrorist organization, that's crazy town. As someone who spends her time on college campuses, I have had a front row seat to this evolution of reality, and it is shocking. It is shocking to see now young people who, I used to see this a little bit before COVID, but it's gotten worse since COVID, because I would have these conversations. I continue to have these conversations where you back up the train, right? When someone's completely yelling at you, they don't care about the baby in the womb, and you back up the conversation and you ask about, does their life have value? Let's not talk about this faceless child you haven't seen or have no, relationship to. Let's talk about you. Do you, as a 21-year-old college student, have value? It used to be that everyone would say, yeah, I have value. I know I got value. It's not the case anymore. I rarely now have someone who's justifying abortion who will tell me that they have value, or can tell me how they know they have value or where their value comes from. We have a society of young people who do not know that they themselves have value. If you do not know that you have value, then giving value and subscribing value to an inconvenient human is going to be really difficult. And when you don't think you have value, of course you don't think your political enemy has value. Of course you would think violence can be justified on some of your enemies because you don't have value. Why do they have any value? At the end of the day, this entire abortion conversation comes down to is what is in the womb? And does what is in the womb have value? And is that value the same as you and I's value? And if you don't know that you're valuable, or that 21-year-old that I'm talking to doesn't know that she has value or he has value, trying to get them to see that a baby in the womb who is inconvenient to his mom, who wasn't intending to get pregnant, that is little, that is weak, that doesn't have a fully developed brain yet, that can't survive outside the womb, trying to convince someone that that little helpless human member of our race has equal value to us when they don't think they have any value. This is why I have bodyguards on campus. This is why Lydia Taylor Davis, our other spokesperson, Students for Life, now has bodyguards on campus. We live in a strange world when I have to fundraise for bomb dogs at the National Pro-Life Summit, where I have to get, at the 2 days before the National Pro-Life Summit this January, I had to authorize and find in my budget $30,000 extra in security just to have the event because leftists were roaming DC left over from the inauguration. This is crazy. This is the result of a culture that doesn't value humans. that has been saying for more than 50 years that some humans, little tiny ones, don't have any value. It's an absolute tragedy. This Easter week, we are reminded that each of us has value, that we serve a God, a creator who loved us so much that he sent his son, his only son to earth to literally suffer and die for us so that we can live in all eternity with him. That's how much value you and I have. That he sacrificed his son, and his son willingly, even though his son had the power to escape his fate, his son willingly suffered on the cross and died for us because we are so valuable. That's the whole point of the Easter season. That is why we are Christians. That's why we are an Easter people, because we know we have value and we are loved so much that we serve a God who gave his son, and we serve his son who died on the cross that we could live forever in heaven with him. We have value. That is why we know the preborn child has value. This battle between life and death, between peace and violence, really comes down to a battle of good and evil. It goes back to ancient times where there were people violently sacrificing children to demons, has always been part of our human history. We want to think sometimes that we're so evolved, that we've evolved beyond this brutality of human sacrifice. But the truth is, the further we get from God and believing in a creator, the closer we get to violence and evil.
Hey Project Jen, it's Kristan here. And if you're like me, spring is a perfect time to do some spring cleaning around the house. And I can't think of a better way to refresh your space than with brand new, ultra soft bed sheets. Well, it does get better with bed sheets that support saving babies. That's why I'm so excited to share with you that Students for Life America has teamed up with Cloud Bed Sheet Fundraising to give $20 from every set of sheets you purchase directly to our pro-life mission. These sheets are high quality, ultra soft, and have a 99% satisfaction rate. And yes, I have them in my own home and I love them. It's so easy to be part of this. You head to 123fundraiser.com/life and choose from beautiful colors and the sizes that you need, and then you'll be making impact for life with every set of sheets you buy. Plus, they come with 100% satisfaction, money back, guarantee, so there's no risk, only reward. Shop now at 123fundraiser.com/life and help save babies with every cozy night's sleep you have.
Thank you so much for joining me in this episode of the Kristan Hawkins Show. Make sure you subscribe and follow for more discussions like this. To hear from me daily, if you want to get pro-life news or something I think you need to know about or should join, just sign up for my personal text line. You just text Kristan to 53445. Until next week, keep speaking up for the voiceless. And remember, you have value just as those children in the womb do. And we have a Savior. We serve a God who loved us so much to send us a Savior, because that's how valuable we are. Bye, everyone.